Welcome back to Awakening in Health with Dennis O'Connor this morning. And I have the pleasure of having a fantastic guest with me, a man called Tom Barnett, who I started following his work probably about 4 years ago. And to say he's enigmatic and a wealth of knowledge and has his focus on a lot of different areas probably would be an understatement. Probably to say he's a bit of a cult and a folk figure in some areas also wouldn't be an understatement. And maybe many mainstream people wouldn't know a lot about Tom, apart from a time when he actually ran for local mayor in Byron Bay. And as usual, people who've listened to my work know I'm not a big fan of the mainstream media and what they do. I will give a shout out to Cairns 89.1 FM for allowing me to view my comments and air my opinions. And I'll also clarify that my opinions certainly aren't the reflection of the show in general. But I would like to give a really big welcome and a thank you for Tom this morning for coming on my show to have a bit of a talk. Tom, welcome.
Thanks, Dennis. It's good to see you.
Fantastic. We met in person a few weeks back at a Freedom event up here in Queensland, and it was great to see you in the flesh. And so we set up this little chat that we're going to have. So yeah, I'm interested to find out a little bit more about you. I've watched a fair bit of your content, and we kind of touched on it a little bit up near Koa, but about kind of your background and about where you came from. And just from memory, you kind of, I guess, painted this picture of a little bit of a rebel, never really buying what normal society had for you or continually threw in front of you. So could you just maybe give a small bit of a breakdown for our listeners about that?
So when I was a holistic health practitioner for about 12 years. That was my profession. And then I got into film and photography and alternative media. And I just wanted to help share other people's stories. But then came 2020 and I made a video that went everywhere, which was titled, "Can You Catch a Virus?" Because it was about, what was going on at the time and asking a question as to whether people had questioned for themselves whether what's put in their face is, the reality or there's another perspective to it. And so since then, I've been educating people more on, where do our rights come from? Where does health come from? What level of responsibility do we need to take for ourselves? And what level does outsourcing actually take away from us?
That's nice. Yeah, I think I was going to probably have more of a conversational tone about it, but I think we're going to get straight into the nuts and bolts of a few things fairly quickly, actually. But one of the things that I found, I was starting to look into the kind of common law area, and I use that very, very loosely, that common law. And I found some of your takes on justice and the moral type of karmic approach to how justice works actually influenced my research fairly heavily, and even probably some of your references. But when I was looking at stuff, I was looking at people like Jordan Maxwell and people like David Straight to a certain extent and a few others. But again, just for people who are not really au fait with that kind of area, how would you define the conversation around, I guess, lawfulness and even legalities? And why is it important for people to know?
Well, why it's important depends. I mean, for some people, it's not important to know, to be honest, because they're just happy with the life that they live. They think that that's the reality that we're here to experience, and they're not wrong if that's what they think. For those that do have an internal compass that questions whether there is an authority source over them that is not based on true morals, like, morals to do with life and morals to do with what is right, then that's where legalities and lawfulness can come in handy to know more about. So in plain terms, lawfulness is about what's right, and morals and justice, and it's to do with living. So for those of us that know we are living beings and how we treat each other matters and there are consequences, that's what lawfulness is. Legalities is a world that is simply for those that aren't living. And you might wonder what that means. Well, what it means is that it regulates corporations. So corporations such as McDonald's, Nike, if you look deeper into it, you'll find that the Australian government and every government throughout the world is also a corporation. So is the police department that enforces the government rules, and they're actually called statutes, which apply to those that are not living. So then you go, but I'm living. How would that not apply to me? Well, the answer is that the name that we are given, the way that our system is set up, that is also a corporation. So as you agree to being those, you are falling under corporate rule. You are falling under legalities and the legal system, which only regulates corporations, that which is not alive. Lawfulness, on the other hand, is more like, hey, Dennis, if you're going to like steal something from me, there are repercussions for that. And as a society, we find a solution for that. Whereas legalities is like, you arbitrarily did not follow some arbitrary rule. Now you have a penalty imposed on you, and I will take from you, from your bank account, your time, impose restrictions on you, or what have you. So that's the main differences. And the reason that how I approach it is that I approach it from a natural law perspective. And that simply means what governs this world that we live in, not what government governs this world we live in, what actual powers govern this world that we live in. So we're talking about natural law. What governs sun, moon cycles also governs how our bodies work, and also governs the repercussions of thoughts and actions and consequences. And that's how we have more of a moral compass rather than a legal book compass. And it's the main differences. I mean, there's obviously a lot more to it, but they're the main differences.
Okay, so it sounds like there is a certain esoteric type edge to what you're talking about, but I guess it's like most things when we go to court, for example, there is that esoteric edge, whether we like it or not. There, people, even though it's automatically initially might sound a little bit far out, when we go to court, we swear in the Bible, so we do have an esoteric framework for all types of lawfulness and legal systems. So are you saying that there is a very distinct difference then between that kind of natural or kind of karmic system energy, or not physical system, and then the very the huge legal system, which most people think governs them, and that it would include, let's say, traffic fines, or that might include not paying your taxes and ending up in jail, or that might include any number of other things. That might include living in a building in Melbourne and getting locked down because of this idea that you will harm other people if you go outside your building. Are you saying that there should be, and there is, a very distinct difference between those two?
There's a huge difference, massive difference. So what we're looking at is two very different worlds. One's public and one's private. The private is the world of the living, and the public is the world of entities and legalities.
Okay, so in the private, then, just to open that a little bit further, what you're saying is that we almost have to make a decision about which world we're living in, and if people are not aware that there is a distinction, they automatically presume that the real world is this fictional world of legalities that they have to comply to. And if they don't comply, one of my colleagues in the radio station here, Brett Oles, I just heard him on his show before talking about this picture he got for his son not wearing a seatbelt, or his son's friend. And in the picture, it actually looks like this fella is wearing his seatbelt. So Brett's had to do this run around and end up in court and say, hey, listen, what's going on here? Most people wouldn't even bother to do that. They just accept it. So I think what you're probably suggesting is that we need to be aware that we do have avenues. And the more we know about the natural law and natural justice system, the more we can actually do something about the unfairness of the other system. Would that be okay? A way of saying that?
Definitely. It comes down to the principles of how these things operate, and that is everything's an offer, especially in the world of commerce, which is what we're dealing in because it's the world of corporate. So what happens is, in that world, there's always an offer given. Now, most people assume that what's given to them is factual, it's done and dusted, and therefore, because you've already agreed on that level, it's formed what's called a tacit agreement. But it's only an offer. So there are many different ways to handle that offer. The example you just gave, Dennis, is prime. It just exemplifies that, because people take it as if that's real and then they act accordingly. Whereas your friend has questioned it and now is acting in a different way to make that not as real as it was first perceived to be. And how effectively you do that will mean that it's not even real at all, and or it goes the other way. So therefore, you actually extract money from the one that made the offer because they made a false or vexatious claim against you. So that's the world of commerce. It's all by offers. How you handle the offer, you either fully accept it, you negotiate it, or you just decline it. And either way, there is an agreement formed. You're either not performing that, you're going to perform, but based on these conditions, that's a negotiation, or you fully perform it. And that's what most people do. They just fully accept it, not realizing that it was only an offer that they could negotiate or decline or counter offer or whatever the case might be.
So, Tom, are you saying that every one of these so-called fines and every one of these mandates, and that's an interesting word as we know in itself, are you saying that these are all offers?
Yeah, everything. But
So,
not just in that realm. It's like everything is an offer, literally everything.
so can you elaborate on that? When you say everything, what are you? Why would you make that little point? Everything.
Because people then try to isolate it to just a fine or something like that. But everything's an offer. How you respond to, like, I don't know, somebody telling you that you're going to get locked down, how you respond to somebody telling you that there's like a terrorist attack, bad person if you don't act this way and a good person if you act that way. That's all offers. The way we behave, the way we express ourselves in the world is mostly an indoctrination through an offer, and we accepted it, and therefore an agreement's formed. That's why we can't, because what it really comes down to is exiting from victim consciousness, and that's where people will become a lot more free, because we feel that we are oppressed or that we have to do something against our will or whatever the case may be. And we end up expressing ourselves into the world in a manner that is not in line with who or what we really are at our core. So therefore, we've failed to realize that everything is an offer. And now we are living based on some other presupposition or some other, I don't know, it's just a presumption. We live under presumptions as opposed to our core self. And that's why most people are like very disparately living to what they really are.
It's almost like when I hear you speaking just the last couple of minutes there, Tom, it's almost like there is almost a hallucination of a cage. And when we don't recognize the extent of offers that are everywhere, that cage manifests itself. And by appreciating that there are offers, we actually can unshackle ourselves or have freedom. And things that come to mind for myself certainly are working in the mainstream medical health system and being in very adverse situations, doing things that you intrinsically know are not right. And if I had probably some of the knowledge that I have now, I would have been able to appreciate the offers involved as opposed to thinking that I had to comply. And I guess that's an important message for anybody who's listening here this morning. This show usually goes out on a Monday morning. It's the start of the week, and people we're in a situation where depression and anxiety, for example, are through the roof. More people are taking antidepressants than ever before. Would you then, just to open up where you came from before, suggest that by appreciating that absolutely every scenario is an offer, that if you can respond and maybe not accept the offer or have I guess a conditional acceptance, people could be living in their virtue and in their true form, their true way, and they could possibly maybe make big inroads to mental health conditions, for example.
Yeah, definitely, because you're not then a subject to what is being offered, because knowing something is an offer means that you have control. Now, why that scares most people is because they don't know what to do with that kind of power. So therefore they give it back away. They're like, I don't want that. No, I have to do that. No, I don't have an option. No, I am a victim of circumstance. No, I am living under the label of this mental health condition, this depression, this anxiety, this ADHD, this bipolar disorder or whatever, because that gives somebody a framework, which is safety and security. It's like, if I'm in this box, I'm safe. Much like being inside of a cage gives you safety and security, because you're like, at least I can't be attacked. At least I'll get food at this time every day, or whatever the case may be. And that's the reality of most people. That's what Plato's allegory of the cave is about as well, which is
That's an interesting one. Yeah, and even to a certain extent, you could well, actually not to a certain extent, but very definitely you could even say that a diagnosis is an offer, and if you accept that diagnosis, you are adding bars to the cage. And this is something that I teach about when I see clients, is the nocebo effect versus the placebo effect. And the power of the placebo effect is quite incredible. If you refuse to accept that spell, that magic of a diagnosis that's put on you, you can actually make dramatic recoveries. So could you try and then, and I guess I've got the liberty of kind of looking at this for a good few years, so I kind of do know the approach you're coming from, but I'm very conscious of people who are really new to this kind of paradigm. Could you give us a real world example, either with yourself or people that you've helped, that sets that out, about the power of this recognition and what it can do for you in real life?
As in realizing things are an offer?
Absolutely. So have you dealt with, for example, clients who have just made really tremendous gains from appreciating that, and how, or even with yourself, when you came to that realization yourself, did you thrive? Is there any nuts and bolts actual scenarios you can put in front of me?
Well, I mean, about 1,000, but it's like, for me, it was getting over chronic fatigue syndrome, which was like 15 years worth. For me, it was also getting over being homeless, getting over injuries, dealing with many kinds of fines that the government tried to give me and never having to have paid any and never having any repercussions for those. With other people, it's the same sort of thing, not accepting a diagnosis for what is offered, not accepting, a fine for whatever the case may be, and offer to go to court, and offer to go to jail, and offer to pay something. It's a framework whereby when you see it like that, you can handle it appropriately. Because what most people do is they revert to emotion. And it's like, this isn't fair, and you can't do that, or I'm like so helpless because I've got cancer or something like that. It's like all in emotion. It's like, in law and under natural law, emotions and opinions don't count. What counts are the facts at law. So you either did or you didn't do something. You can rebut a presumption or you can't. And the same thing goes with the health of your body. It doesn't matter about I'm this or I'm that, or this feels. It doesn't matter about that. It's the facts that count. It's like, what is. So when you can just stick to that, you cut through all of the BS and you just get to the actual thing, and that actual thing is the result, and everything else is just fluff.
Okay, Tom. So let's just how can you being homeless be an offer, and what's the presumption that happened during that scenario, and what did it look like for you to not accept that offer or refuse that offer to change your circumstances? Because homelessness is very abstract. It's probably the perfect little discussion to have to open up that deeper side of the discussion.
Depends on the circumstance, because I was homeless several times for different reasons. Going to the first ones where I was actually just had run out of money and was really, really sick and had no prospects, that was an offer because I pretty much offered that to myself. I was given offers by other people to assist, which I refused. I was living under my own victimhood at the time as well. And the world owed me something and I needed to get back on my feet. I was a professional athlete. I was taken out in my prime. Like, the world owed me stuff. Wasn't fair. And all of that sort of stuff. So I wore it as like a cloak of victimhood. So as an offer, go ahead.
Sorry, Tom, but you're actually getting specifically to what I was going to ask. So how is that a presumption and an offer on your part?
So the presumption is that there's no other choice. This is where you're going to end up. And these are the circumstances that you are going to live by. They were the offers. And I accepted those because I did not give a counter offer, as in, wait, is this really the option here? Is this what I have to do? That's one of my favorite questions. Like, let's say a police officer says, hey, you need to go over there and you can't go here. I say, do I have to? Because I don't have to. Like, they've got a real difficult time answering that question, honestly. So my question that I never asked was, do I have to? Is this the only way? I never put in a counter offer. And what I was really agreeing to was that I had no self-worth. I did not deserve better, and I deserved what was there. It's really those two things. I deserved what I was getting, and though I did not deserve better or anything different. So therefore, I am the one that formed the agreement that these are the circumstances under which I will live. And obviously, in a victim state, that's like, you kind of get off on that. Like, that's I don't have to do anything in the world. I don't have to perform anything for other people because look at me, it's so hard. And it's like escapism and a reason or an excuse not to have to participate in life and in the world.
it's your safety, isn't it? And it's your comfort zone. Listen, who offered you, Tom? Was it life? Was it you know, an external deity? Was it an internal consciousness that you weren't? Who gave you the offer, or how would you
I
explain
think
it? I
it's,
know.
yeah, no, good
Yeah,
question. I'd say it's all three. And I think that's why in many texts, when you start going out of the mainstream, you talk about the Trinity, and there are those three factors that come into play. And that's what it was, all three.
very, very interesting. And this is why I really enjoy looking at your stuff, Tom, because it's you really do take things from a very simple approach, but you connect up with much more complex kind of ideas as well. But I think when you're going down that road to the complex ones, just keeping it as simple as possible is really imperative. So, okay, again, bear in mind the average, some people might be getting up this morning really struggling, not liking what their day is going to be looking like. The mortgage is due, the kids' fees are due, the credit card is overdue, the Netflix is about to expire. So they need to work. Not only do they need to work, their time short. They need to take the kids to, I don't know, basketball, baseball. They you know, they're exhausted. How can somebody, where are the offers there, and how can somebody break that pattern? They're trapped. If they decide to live a joyful life, free and happy, like you know, how dare you criticize them? You don't understand how hard that is.
Well, I'd just laugh at them if they said that, because that'd be, I just laugh them across the face and I go, do you want to whinge some more, or do you want to actually do something about it? You know, it's like, first, I know those were just random examples, but those are very real. And I would say
Absolutely.
to somebody, if they were sitting in front of me, I would say, you don't need any of those, and you know it. You don't need Netflix. You don't need a credit card. There's different ways for your kids to have activities. You don't even need a mortgage. So the question then becomes, do I have to? Because people resign themselves to, oh, you don't understand. I have to. I have to. I've had that story repeated in me so many times, and I know it very, very well. That's why I can sit here and say it like it is, because I've had that story run many times. So the reality is, you don't actually need to do any of those. You don't need to go to work today. So then you go, yeah, no, but I do. I got to. And it's like, no. I know that there will be consequences for not, but the fact is, you don't have to. Something else will materialize. Now, one of the major gifts that I experienced from going through homelessness for, it was a total of over 3 years in my life, was that I realized you don't have to do anything. So there are always there's a thought, and then an action and a consequence, for sure. But at the end of the day, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to pay your bills. What's going to happen then? Well, you know, your car will get repossessed. You won't be under the same roof that you're under now. Sure. But something different will come. And when you realize that, when you get down to the crux of life, knowing that any kind of lack is self-created, you will realize that life will give you something else. There's no such thing as zero value in this world, including within us. So that if you don't have this house you're in now, you'll just be in a different situation. Is it better? Is it worse? Well, that's open to judgment. That's all it is. But at the same time, it'll just be different. You can decide to not have that. And it's a difficult thing for people to break out of, but what they're in is a state of victim consciousness. It's a victimhood, and that's it. It's like, once you decide you don't want that anymore, then what's keeping you there usually as well is all the doubt, the fear. I'm not really worthy of more. I don't think that I can perform better. I can't have more than that. And that's what's really keeping you there. No other external circumstance keeps us there. So if somebody said that to me, I'd just be like, well, let's get down to it. Let's see what the truth actually is. And at the end of the day, people don't need any of those things. They're just doing it because that's what they think that they know, and they're not willing to choose something different.
Could you then add to that maybe and say that if you were to relinquish maybe some of those bonds and chains, and your energy started flowing in a more positive manner, you might actually welcome some pro-life type energy, and you may also welcome some miraculous things entering your life, because you're not trapped in that offer of, my life has to be miserable, my life has to be bad. And if so, are there examples of that you can share?
Yeah, well, the main thing that we're talking about here is that we're stuck in this idea. We'll always say the same thing. It's fear not, and it's to have faith and trust. And as soon as we fall into the lack and the pessimism and the fear, well, life will present that way. And as a man, it's actually really important because you probably know, Dan, it's like so many men suffer from mental health issues. And it's a very quiet, unspoken, very insidious thing that afflicts the men in society. And part of it is because men are very honorable, and men will sacrifice a lot just to make sure that the family has food. They can have their Netflix. The kids can play basketball. The wife can, go out on the week. We can go out to dinner on the weekends. And the man really, really suffers for that. But there's a key thing here, in that no man is ever meant to martyr himself for anything at all. And when you see guys that do it well, they're not forcing something to happen. They're not resigning themselves to, well, I got to get up and do this today because I have to feed my family. Now, on one level, that is an honorable thing for sure. And men aren't given enough credit for what we sacrifice quietly that we don't whinge about. No one ever acknowledges it every single day. But the thing is, it doesn't have to be that way. And when you can reframe that and you start to live like on different terms, which is a whole other story, but we could potentially get into that another time. But that's when we start to realize that it's us, that it's our kingdom that we're here to inherit. And that provides for the family in a way that is providing way more sustenance for them, because you're not martyring yourself. You're not a shell of what you could be. You're actually this inspiring figure that not only provides food, shelter, activities, and some dates out each week or month or whatever, but you're actually this grand light that supports them in ways that you will never support them with if you are a shell of a man that is only fighting his way through life to be honorable and provide for your family.
Yeah, I love that, Tom, and that takes it in a great direction, which I really want to explore with you. And it's probably the perfect time just now to chip in with a bit of a break for some music, and actually open that up after the break. I'm here with a gentleman called Tom Barnett, who has got a massive following in all sorts of areas all around the world. He's very, very underrated and maligned in Australia. And really that says more about the forces in Australia that don't like this kind of information and this empowerment being given to men and women in general. But being a man myself, and obviously Tom being a man himself, we're going to focus more on speaking about that value that men can have in the world. We'll be back after this.